Hey, before we jump in, if you like what you hear on the podcast, check out our free Substack newsletter, The Sober Friends Dispatch. It's a weekly dose of real talk, stories from the sober life, and a little extra support between episodes. Go to soberfriendspod.substack.com and subscribe. That's soberfriendspod.substack.com. All right, let's get into the show. Welcome to the Sober Friends podcast. My name is Matt J. If you are looking to get sober, if you're sober curious, heck, if you've even been on this path for some time, you're in the right place. We're the guest today. Bringing the ladies back in to share a little bit of their story because the guys are always here doing their thing. And I want to introduce my friend Rebecca, who I met a little over a year now until your world blew up with the hurricane, that you invited me in to be a speaker at one of your meetings, which was such a fabulous meeting, like the best Zoom meeting I've ever been to. And then the hurricane moved in and you stayed sober and you said, I'm ready to tell my story. I'm ready to inspire other people. So I want to welcome Rebecca to the show. Welcome to the Sober Friends podcast, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Matt. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, I'm excited to have you here. It's always nice to mix it up. Where is it worth starting for you? Do you want to take us back to, the story of the struggle? Where do you think your story begins?
Well, my story begins it's so textbook, right? That I've learned I'm really not that special. That's been part of the sober journey.
Yeah.
I'm really, here I am, not special. I'm pretty much a textbook alcoholic in recovery. I choose to say that I'm in recovery. I don't know that I could subscribe to ever saying recovered because I think it's constant. It'll be for the rest of my days.
I tend to agree.
So I'm in recovery. I've been sober since April 10th of 2023. Getting sober didn't come as any surprise to me. I knew that I was there, and I'd kind of known for a long time that I had a pretty bad relationship with alcohol. As far as the progression goes, it's, again, very textbook. In my family, I grew up around alcohol. It was a part of our social fabric in our family. It was kind of a rite of passage, to be honest. So growing up, it was people drank on the weekends. It was always around. And maybe somewhere I thought, I want to be like one of the adults. And there truly was, that rite of passage piece about, oh, now you're old enough to have wine at the holiday dinner type thing. And then as I got into high school, I think my first drunk, I was 14. So prior to high school, right before high school, got into my teenage years and just really wanted to be that party girl, the life of the party that carried with me through college and into adulthood. And I watched the people around me grow out of that. I did not grow out of that. I kept going and very career driven and wanted to just kind of have that exciting life and work hard and play hard.
I want to back you up for a second because you caught my interest in a couple things.
Yeah.
What made you want to be the party girl? And where did that come from?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't really. I've heard thousands of times in meetings, that desire to fit in, and I've heard people say I didn't feel like I fit in, and I can't really identify with that. That I never. It wasn't that I didn't feel like I fit in, but maybe I wanted to be bigger than life or more fun or really. I've always kind of liked to push the limits in life. And how far can I take something? And maybe that's where that came from.
I was getting a vibe there. That's why I wanted to ask.
Yeah, and as I've worked through my program and through my sobriety, I think for me that the biggest takeaway has been I've always been searching for the next best thing, the bigger thing, wanting that more, whether it's more at work, more, in my
Mm-hmm.
career, more, a bigger bank account, the next best car.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just kind of never being able to settle and being content with who I was and what life I had in front of me. And that work still continues, is trying to be like, hey, you know what? Life's pretty good. Why don't you just sit back and relax and be for a while?
That can be hard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really hearing here that the chase was the high, pushing
Mm-hmm.
yourself to get somewhere, that pushing your limits or reaching towards a goal was the high. But as soon as you get there, now it's unsatisfying. We got to get to the next place.
100%. 100%. Whether it would be a relationship
Mm-hmm.
or a career or, like I said, a bigger bank account, and I would get the thing and it would fall flat after, almost like immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So now what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? Versus really trying to learn how to just be content.
That's hard. I don't know if I'm there
Mm-hmm.
because it's easy, especially social media, you compare.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
I think that, sitting in meetings, one of the most valuable things I heard early on was identifying, and instead of don't compare, identify and don't compare. And it sounds so cliche. There's so much I have taken from my program that has just, it applies in so many places in my daily life, in my work, in my relationships with people. It, I'm so grateful for the things that I have learned in the program because I can look at social media and I can tell myself, comparison is the thief of joy.
yep.
Don't do it. Just stop. You know better, because if you compare, you're gonna fall short. You know. So I can do that. I cringed the first time I heard someone say grateful alcoholic. I just thought, what planet have I landed on? Where, how could anybody be grateful for this?
Yep.
And no truer words, I think, have been spoken. And I look at going through this journey and just how much it's transformed my life. And my friends, my family could maybe disagree, but I feel like I handle life a whole lot better now, to almost 2.5 years later, than I did 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
In my experience, when you're new in sobriety, it's not like, well, you're going to see the difference slowly at 10 years. No. It's sort of like a hockey stick that 6 months sober, you may not see it, but other people are like, something is very different. Especially if you're working a program and you're doing the work,
Mm-hmm.
that type of stuff doesn't happen overnight, but it doesn't take a long time either. So 6 months, a year, 2 years, people will see that difference.
I like to think that they can, and for me, I wanted to get sober. I knew I needed to get sober, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to get sober. Let's be honest. I thought my life was going to be boring, and things were going to end. And I remember thinking, why would I even want to go on vacation now? Because who can have fun on vacation if you
Yeah.
can't drink, And how am I ever going to fly on an airplane again? Because half the fun is having cocktails on the plane. And so, but the gifts of sobriety are just insane, because my life has exploded. Bored? I'm not bored. I I have more things to keep me busy now. It didn't happen that way initially. But when I first came into the rooms in April of 2023, I mean, I knew it was either get busy living or get busy dying because my body couldn't take it anymore.
Yep.
The doctor said, "Hey, here's where you're at," and
Oof.
it's not pretty. You're not in a good. If this continues, we know where this is going to end. So I think kind of where I was going with this was I spent the first year 110% focused on getting sober, staying sober, and learning everything that I possibly could. I joke about it now, but I heard when I went into the rooms, you've got to read the big book.
Yep.
So overachiever me, I was like, I'm going to read the big book. And I thought that literally meant like read the whole thing, like do it, just read the whole, and I did. It took me like 3 months, but I read the whole big book.
Stories and all?
Yes, the entire thing cover to cover.
How did you retain anything?
I took a lot of notes. So when I first started going to meetings too, I have journals full of notes and sayings.
Okay, so you went and say, okay, I'm going to read this, but you actually had a notebook.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's not normal. I hear a lot of, I'm going to rip through it and I'm going to read it, but then I'm not going to really remember what I read because I'm ripping through it. That was my case. I ripped through it. Right. I don't know what I read. You actually went in with a notebook and everything. That's high achiever stuff.
And little tabs. I still, my big book is tabbed of the things. And at a point while reading the big book, I started putting notes in the margin, and I would put the date that something stood out to me while I was reading the big book. And I'm really glad I did that because now I can go back and go, wow, I was maybe, I don't know, 6 months sober or, however many on this day I read this and it really stood out to me for a reason. And I started, I read probably 10, and I say read, but what I really mean is I listened to audiobooks, probably 8 to 10 quit lit books in the first year. I read Living Sober. That was actually the first book I read, which I found very helpful.
I read that when I started. To me, first year of sobriety, that is the most important book to read. And it's the book that I enjoyed the most. I didn't enjoy the big book at first, but I enjoyed Living Sober because I could read and find something that was going to help me in the moment. Remedial. But I needed remedial at that time. I needed somebody to tell me, read my 5 more pages before you think about a drink. And that's really helpful. Mm-hmm. But that's terrific, that book.
I love it. And I still go to beginner meetings, and I'm still, the meeting that you attended was a beginner meeting, and I still attend that meeting on a regular basis. And I tell that my suggestion, start with Living Sober. It's a great place to start. It's easy. It's bite-sized chunks, and it can be very practical early on. And I had never listened to a podcast probably a day in my life until I began getting sober. And that's how I found this podcast. And it was a real lifeline for me, Matt, because I don't know, we'd have to look at the dates. I don't know how many episodes you had recorded up to that point, but I was able to listen to this podcast almost every day for a really long time.
It was a lot. If I'm thinking 2023, high 100s, I'm going to guess.
So I would listen to this podcast.
Geez, those early ones were long too.
Like every morning, an hour before I would, as I would get ready for my day, get ready for work. And then I found a couple of other podcasts, and I listen to you once a week now. Like, I was sad when I got through all of your episodes. I was like, now what am I going to listen to? But there are a couple other podcasts that I really enjoy.
Oh, there's just so many good ones out there
Mhm.
of every flavor that is. There's every podcast may not be right for you, but you are right for some podcast because there's so many flavors, whether it be AA focused, not AA focused. You don't want to use the language alcoholic. You want to just hear from women. You want to hear just from men. There's something out there. If you do enough work, you're going to find something that you will connect with, much like a meeting.
Agreed. And that's part of what I think we have to do, right? I've had to kind of experiment with what works for me. What is it, a combination of in-person meetings? Is it a combination of, maybe I just want to go online for a while? I personally find podcasts and literature and audiobooks very helpful. That works for me. Is it going to be does my prescription work for everybody? No. And I think that's part of the growth that we have to go through, is really experimenting with the things that work for us as individuals. I get a little antsy when I kind of hear people prescribe a one-fits-all solution.
Me too.
Because I just think that that's completely unrealistic. And I, sometimes part of the way that I've approached, if someone asks me and they ask about how did you get, what is sobriety? How did you do it? What did you do? And I use the analogy of building a house. And for me, AA and the 12 steps are my blueprint. And I can build a very solid foundation with this program and with working my steps. That's a good foundation. Now, then comes the part, the foundation's up, the framing is up. The foundation's there, it's laid, and the framing is up. But I have to build the rest of the house so that I can live in it.
Yes.
And maybe that means I need a bigger kitchen than somebody, or maybe I need 4 bedrooms and somebody else only needs 2. And maybe I want blue walls and somebody else wants, white walls. That's where I have had to say, thank you for the suggestion, but I'm going to probably paint my walls yellow instead. Because I've met some folks that are like, you have to go to in-person, you have to do this, you have to do that. And I'll be honest, being defiant most of my life, really it wasn't until I met a bunch of alcoholics that I actually started taking suggestions. And I'll listen to an alcoholic probably more than I'll listen to a non-alcoholic. I'm like, okay, I'll listen to you. But if you want to get me to be rebellious, tell me I have to do something. And so that happened with the first couple of people who sponsored me in the beginning. You have to do this, you have to do that. And I was like, I don't know that that's going to work for me. I'm not going to go to in-person meetings 5 times a week. I'm not.
I find that a lot of people have this mentality because they saw a lot of sponsees fall off because they didn't do all of these things. So it's a control method of, I know this works. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of people who are, you must do it this way, because their drinking was in such a way that they needed that tight structure, and it worked really well for them. Mm-hmm. And so they're trying to help somebody else the way they were helped. And there are times that, and this is where I think AA can get a bad name. I think AA works great. Your AA group is as good as the people in it. It's the people that can be a problem, not AA. And
Right.
there needs to be more empathy, and empathy in terms of listen first, get a vibe, listen first. And you might have that person of, okay, I'm listening, I'm getting your vibe. We're going to do it this way. Or I'm going to get the person and maybe we're going to try something a little bit different, slower, faster, whatever, and see where it goes, because I'm reading that it's going to be counterproductive. And that's hard because a lot of us are black and white personalities
Mm-hmm.
or have had trauma, or there just was another time where this is the way it was done and people don't want to change. I've gone to district meetings where people said we can't put things up digitally. People just don't own smartphones. And I'm like, okie dokie. That's not true.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. But even despite the imperfect
Mm-hmm.
way that we are human, and despite life not being perfect, looking, you can only connect the dots backwards. That's one of
Yeah.
my favorite quotes from Steve Jobs. He talks about connecting you can only connect the dots looking backwards. I just cannot imagine my life now being a life of drinking the way that I was before getting into my program and getting sober. And, we've kind of talked a little bit about the hurricane and
Yeah.
going through the crazy of Helene here in the mountains in Western North Carolina. And when all of that happened, I was here I went through it by myself. Like, I was literally alone in my house, and we kind of didn't expect the flooding of biblical proportions and the mudslides and getting all the things, right?
It's why people move to the mountains of North
Right.
Carolina. There are a lot of people who moved out of Florida and moved to the mountains of North Carolina because I don't have to worry about the floods there.
Yes. Yes. And yeah. And I remember sitting here at one point thinking, there's nothing to prevent me from relapsing.
Mm-hmm.
I have every excuse in the world to relapse if I wanted to at this point. And who would blame me? Now, I kind of joke about that, but it was pretty intense to go through all of that. And I sat on my back deck and I was like, this storm is not going to steal my sobriety date. And it made me more determined than anything. I was like, I'm going to make it through this and I'm going to stay sober. And I remember being grateful that I was sober because things were so crazy and there was so much to deal with that honestly, I could not imagine, having gone through that, being an active drinker. I can't imagine how much worse it would have been if I had been in a situation where I was actively drinking. It would have been a million times worse, for sure. For sure. And I
How many
look back.
people do you think were?
Hmm.
How many people do you think were in Western North Carolina in the mountains who were drinking through that, and what that must have been like for them?
Well, there something in so about and I journaled everything that happened in the days of this,
Mm-hmm.
the day of the storm, on for about a month. So I can tell you, probably like day 2-ish, I decided to venture out because I was trying to find a Wi-Fi signal so I could let people know I was okay, because we had lost all communication. And someone said, go down to this church. They have a Wi-Fi signal that you can get in the parking lot. And so I had gone and I was driving back home, and I wasn't prepared for what I saw when I left my neighborhood, first of all, because it was far more devastation than I could imagine. And I was coming home. I never got the Wi-Fi signal. I was coming home, and there was one convenience store that was open. And there was a line out the door, and I was like, I'm going to stop, because you know what I wanted that I knew I didn't have? I didn't have Diet Coke. I didn't have enough Diet Coke. And I was like, I'm going to stop and get Diet Coke. That's what I wanted. And I stood in this incredible line. Yeah.
I would be along those lines. My drink is Coke Zero. I'll drink Diet Coke if I got nothing else, but that's enough for me to say I'm in a line. I need this.
I was like, I gotta have. I'm gonna run out of Diet Cokes if I don't get some. So I'm gonna go in there. And so I got in this line, and it was a really surreal moment, because there were cases of beer on the floor there, and there was wine. You can only get beer and wine in the convenience stores here. And I'm standing in this line next to this case of beer, and I started watching what people were carrying out of the store, because I was like, what are other people here getting? And I was seeing people walking out. Now, surprisingly, I would have thought, and maybe it's just my alcoholic brain, like I would have had as many cases as I could carry at that point if I had been actively drinking. Like, I'm going to take it all, as much as I could take. But I noticed people, and one woman who was in line behind me, she looked at me and she said, I'm going to go to the ABC store. So here you have to get liquor at a special store. They call them ABC stores. She goes, I'm going to see if they're open. And in that moment, I knew that she was not in a good place, because she was needing to get liquor. And I looked at her and said, they've got wine, because I knew what she was feeling. I knew. And I thought, I wanted her to just go ahead and get what she needed in that moment to get through, because this was not the time to have that conversation. You know what I mean? And I remember in that moment thinking and thanking God that wasn't me, wondering, is the liquor store open? Can I get liquor? I couldn't imagine how hard that must have been for people who may not have had what they felt like they needed at that during those first few days when nothing was open. When there was nothing you could do. That convenience store moment was really, really, it's so stamped in my brain, because I just remember there was only like 2 Diet Cokes in the cooler, and it wasn't even cold because we hadn't had power for a couple of days. And I was like grabbing those Diet Cokes to it was the last 2 Diet Cokes on the planet, and I was so excited to have Diet Cokes. And I thought, wow, what a mind shift, because I wasn't thinking get the case of beer. My mind was more of on get the Diet Cokes. And I was very, very grateful for that in that moment.
I feel that way too with the Diet Coke or the Coke Zero that I go and get, especially when I'm walking by booze, that's the thing that I want. And it is a nice feeling that I'm not going to drink 12 Diet Cokes. I'll have one. I'm good after that, and I don't have to drink more. I want to back up to something, because you did something a little bit more than what I would have done, but you're also teaching me a lesson. Keep my eyes open for more I could do, where you pulled the lady aside and said, hey, they have wine here. And that was, you kept her potentially from the ABC store of getting something really hard. But it also reminds me, if you're hearing something like that, and the intuition is usually pretty good if somebody's hurting, I got to be better in those situations of hearing somebody say, I'm just going to go to the ABC store. Maybe me turning around and getting out of line and saying, hey, you okay? Really, are you okay? Because maybe people scoff at it, but you never know the impact that you might have on somebody. And it may not even necessarily be, I'm saying that because you're saying you're going to the liquor store. You could lie and say, I just saw something on your face and we've gone through something really terrible. And I want to make sure you're okay. Because it's been hard for me too. And you never know if something like that makes a difference in somebody's life. But maybe even you saying, oh, you don't have to go. You can stay right here. There's that. That in itself of that person feeling heard in some way could have made an impact. And you don't know. That might have been a positive impact. Keep her from buying a bottle of whiskey.
Well, ironically, and so I stood in this crazy line to get my 2 Diet Cokes, and but it took time. It was very long because it was cash and it was weird and it was all the things. And so when I was walking out to my car, she had pulled back into the parking lot of the convenience store. And I just said, they weren't open, were they? And she just looked at me and shook her head. And I said, I'm sorry, and it's just kind of like, take care. I hope everything works out. There's not a lot you can do in those moments. So, and I have to say, like, so much was out of my control in those days when that happened. I mean, completely out of there was very little I could control. And I remember thinking one morning, you go to something as simple as step one, and it's just like, I'm powerless. Because I'm here to tell you, there were a lot of words I had problems with at first. Powerless being one of them. And I'm like, I'm not powerless over anything, until you realize there's a lot you are, or me anyway, a lot I'm powerless over.
Yep.
And I remember thinking, how happy and glad I was that I was able to admit that I was powerless over alcohol, because it's allowed me to admit that I'm powerless over a lot of things. Like, just that simple act of being like, listen, I surrender. I can't fight this. It's bigger than me. And just accepting, for me, it was like accepting defeat against alcohol and just being like, it wins. I cannot beat it. And I think that has served me well in other areas of my life, because it's easier, I think, for me to just be like, this is bigger than me. I can't win. I can't control this. And something so simple as, when things get crazy, is just saying the serenity prayer and just recognizing I need some wisdom about what I can control and what I can't control in this moment. And just for today, because I have a friend in the program that says that a lot in messages. She'll say, just for today. And sometimes that's the best I can do, is just get through today. And I've shared in meetings, it's pretty cool though, because sometimes when I go through my gratitude at the end of the day, sometimes it's just, I stayed sober today. And that's pretty awesome.
It's a huge achievement.
I'm really glad I can say that. Sometimes it's like, wow, that's a really awesome thing to be able to say. And what a gift that is. And it sounds silly sometimes to people who maybe don't understand what an incredible feat that can be some days, is just to say, well, today there weren't a lot of check marks in the win column, but at least I have one. And that's that I did not drink today.
Yeah, but that's such a big win for us, regardless of anything else.
Yeah.
Because if you got drunk, things are far worse.
Exactly. And so what a wonderful perspective for a lot of other things that happen in life. I'll take the L in some columns, but at least at the end of the day, if I stayed sober, I get at least one check mark in the W. I get a win for the day, and it's a big win.
You're bringing it back to the beginning here, where you talked about I don't understand how that person says they're a grateful alcoholic, but that's how you end up being grateful and seeing like, I have this wisdom now because I'm an alcoholic and I don't have to drink. And it feeds into other parts of my life of I'm learning what I can and can't control and letting things go. Maybe if you're not an alcoholic, you don't have that wisdom. And there's other things that are destroying your life. But because we had this problem, we have an advantage over normal people.
Yeah. And, and I even struggle when I hear people say normal, because I'm like, what is normal?
Exactly.
And I've been so lucky to have such supportive friends and family in this process. And one time I said normal to my sister, and she goes, Rebecca, normal is only a setting on a dryer.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I will say I can't drink like other people. I don't say I can't drink like normal people, because I don't know. I have a problem with somehow that sets somebody, that makes them better than me or something. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but I just say I can't drink like other people. Just because, and I've had to treat my alcoholism like a medical disease, right?
Yeah.
And I struggled with that too a little bit, like, but a diabetic can't have sugar. I can't have alcohol. That's my reality, and that's what I have to live with, and it's what I have to work with. And but just it's just, I could say every saying that we hear, progress over perfection. And I go back to, comparison is the thief of joy. And for me, there are a lot of times where I'm like, okay, I've got to reset. I'm going to go back to step one. I'm going to reset. And I don't look at that as a setback. I look at it as a reset. Like maybe I've gotten too comfortable, or maybe I've gotten too confident. Maybe I've gotten overconfident. Maybe I thought, I have to remind myself, for me, my mindset, I will never have this beat.
Right.
Ever. Ever. I will not win this battle. I can't. So sometimes I have to reset and go, well, let's go back to surrender. Let's go back to powerlessness and start and revisit those steps and refresh and reframe.
All right. So I'm learning some lessons here that I needed to hear because I'm not always good at those things. And it took you having a conversation with me they were the things I needed to hear today. So I guess the podcast was for me. Rebecca, I so appreciate you telling the story.
Thank you.
I think people are going to love this one because I thought this was such a great one that I didn't expect that I needed to sit down and I needed to hear your story and see how free it's freeing to hear how you have been freed from this.
Well, I take no credit for half of the things that I say because I probably heard them in a meeting.
And you chose to listen.
I think freedom is probably one of the biggest gifts that we have. Yep. And I heard someone in a meeting say one time, addiction is the only prison where the keys are on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And that sticks with me. I mean, I make a choice every day. Am I going to lock myself in the prison? Am I going to, take full advantage of this freedom that I have been given? This freedom, the bondage of being an alcoholic when you're in full swing. It's horrible. But I want to thank you because I've told you before, we've chatted about this, like this podcast really saved my rear a few times. It really gave me just to hear someone that I could relate to and go, okay, I'm not crazy today. There's nothing wrong with me today. I just have to get through today. I just have, okay, just do today. Just there's people out there, there are a lot of us actually, and we're okay, and we're human beings, and other human beings struggle with other things.
Absolutely.
Just not this. But the fact, I think for me, just acknowledging my imperfection, this defect, this way that I cannot control alcohol, can help me to have more empathy for someone who struggles with something different.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be alcohol. It can be another thing, whatever that is.
Exactly.
And I sometimes, though, I have to go right back to square one and reset and reframe and go, okay, realign yourself and get straight again.
Yeah, I have to remind myself that, and I don't like it. All right, Rebecca's been our guest today. She has been awesome. I know that, look, if you didn't get anything out of this, then go back, start the podcast over again, and listen again. Like Rebecca said with step one, sometimes you need to go back because this was outstanding. It's what I needed. Rebecca, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
And we will see everybody next week. Bye, everybody.